given your transition from a ideology-based diet approach to a more evidence-based Mediterranean diet approach, how do you help your clients transition from their different dietary approaches to probably the Mediterranean ones, given that, people see short-term symptom improvements in any diet because they're eliminating junk and stuff like that. But how do we balance between short-term symptom improvements to long-term health outcomes?
Yeah. So firstly, like just talking about the long-term health outcomes, that's what the components of the Mediterranean diet are there to do. In that, if you look at any like individual food group, as I said, and if see for long-term kind of understanding, we can only rely on prospective cohort studies when it comes to diet. So firstly, within diet, like it's very hard to do like placebo controlled trials. Like you can do it for like some individual macronutrient or mineral, like you can, mask foods in a certain way where like if someone might think they're having something when they're having something else. But for overall food groups, you can't really do placebo controlled trials for diet, of course. So when we're talking about long-term health implications, the only understanding we can get about that is from long-term like observational studies, where they will take large groups of people, they will like track, what they're eating with validated food frequency questionnaires, or in some cases they might even like do actual measurements, like once in a couple of years or so, and then follow them for a couple of decades. And they will make adjustments, like they'll track all the other things, like their smoking, their drinking status, like fiber intake, fruit and vegetable intake, like all these things are tracked, and then they're like adjusted for in statistical models. And then we see like after making those adjustments, do certain food groups and the quantity of them you eat associate with better health outcomes. So we know with this kind of research, like fiber intake, fruit and vegetable intake, like seafood consumption, like these things are unanimously, like multiple studies like this showing that consistently we see benefits, like even for protein, more so for plant protein than for animal protein, we see consistent like long term kind of improvements in different health outcomes. So that's the evidence that is going behind like recommending a Mediterranean diet from a long-term standpoint. And even the randomized control trials, as I said, not just for cardiovascular disease, but even for like all cause, like, not all cause mortality in a short-term trial, but there are various outcomes which are looked at for, improvements like Alzheimer's disease. There's some, like interventional trials with the Mediterranean diet, and like a couple of other health outcomes also, like insulin sensitivity, body weight. There's like trials looking at interventional studies showing benefits with that kind of dietary approach. Just give me a second, sorry. Yeah, so that's the evidence that I use to like make that recommendation. And in terms of helping people transition, a lot of times people will have issue because they might react to a certain food group. So I mean, just from my clinical experience, like most people who come to me, they already have like plant foods and stuff included in the diet. So if someone has serious autoimmune issues and stuff, my recommendation, like typically from a dietary perspective, is to try an elimination diet at some point, like try to eliminate certain foods and reintroduce. So you can find your triggers, but it's that's just like a transitionary thing. You want to find your triggers and stuff. And even with that, like lot of foods, you can actually improve your tolerance to. Like my reaction to coconut and dairy is nowhere near close. Like it's probably 20 or 30% compared to like what it used to be, couple of years back. So a lot of food sensitivities also improve because there are various factors which help us to, like tolerate these foods better. Like some people have undiagnosed gut infections, and because of that, they're reacting to certain foods. And if you do a good job with like clearing the gut, they'll be able to tolerate certain foods in the future. There are different cells in the body that help to build resilience, like T regulatory cells. So if they are increased, like you can improve, like food tolerance to certain things. So a lot of people also think of like if you have food sensitivity, it's there for life. But I've seen this again and again. Like some clients, like I've worked with, they've reacted to eggs, but then I gave them certain intervention, then they started like tolerating eggs again. So it goes both ways that way in terms of like tolerance. So I would recommend something like that. And then my recommendations for diet are different. I don't recommend the Mediterranean diet to everyone, but someone comes with IBS, like some kind of a low FODMAP diet, or someone has like issues with allergies, and like I know for sure they have issues with histamine, I'll recommend them like a low histamine diet. But for general people who come with like mild to moderate symptoms and yes, some issues are not there, then I want them to follow that. Even the people who have health issues, I will tell them like overall, you want to come back to this after we fix your health issues. It's not like you want to go with this for the long run. And people will typically have a problem with increasing their fiber intake. Like if they've not really eaten fiber, because we have like certain species of bacteria in our gut which help us, which feed on these like compounds. And because of like long-term antibiotic use or different factors because of which they might not be present, like the mother's microbiome not having them, or like XYZ, like there are many factors which affect kind of different species of bacteria in our gut. So for whatever reason, if you don't have them and you land up like giving them a lot of fiber, you will actually make things worse for them, because they don't even have the like bacteria to be able to digest like what you're giving them. So it's going to cause them issues. Like we even know this with some interventional studies now, where they give people like fiber, like they're doing a fiber intervention, and there were like three kinds of outcomes within the group, in the intervention group. So like one third of those people saw lowering of inflammation with increasing fiber. One third saw like no, like baseline, like no change. But then one third of the group actually saw like an increase in inflammation after they increased their fiber intake. So this is what I mean when I say there are always like individual, variability that way. Because even you can find certain studies with the carnivores will cite where people eliminated fiber and their constipation went away. But you have to be intellectually honest. You can't like cherry pick like one evidence and then ignore like everything else on the subject. When we have like so much like strong evidence for fiber, like improving constipation in like 50 different trials, but you want to cherry pick that one where there's a certain subgroup who wasn't probably doing well with that, and then say like fiber is not necessary for humans. That's the issue I have. Like you have to like represent the evidence in totality, not just like kind of ignore certain studies and base your views on one. So with that kind of approach, also scientists are trying to now figure out like, okay, is there some kind of intervention we can give to people before increasing their fiber, which can improve the tolerance? So they're now doing trials with different probiotic strains and fermented foods, and trying to see if we give that before increasing fiber, like does that lead to better outcomes and things like that. So that's typically the problem that I see with someone getting on that kind of approach. And then there's different things that you can do, like typically that's where I'll push them to maybe like go deeper into the microbiome, so we can see like if something's going on there and try to correct that. Or there's different compounds which can improve kind of digestion, so like some of those can be used to reduce IBS symptoms and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of tools that way, but it depends. Like I customize depending on the patient.